Well, thankfully we did not have to wait too long for the conclusion of one of Batman's most legendary stories. This is my review of Batman: The Long Halloween, Part 2. The killer known as Holiday continues to stalk the Falcone crime family, while a new class of costumed criminal rises in Gotham City as Batman begins to suspect a former ally might be the notorious killer. Now, for context, I reviewed Part 1 when it came out. You can find it right here, and you can check my thoughts on that if you want to. I also purposefully decided not to grade that film alone because the story was very much unfinished. Intendedly so, but nevertheless unfinished. That film ends and the story is not resolved. The arcs of the characters are not resolved. And in this one is where we get all our payoff. But before I start with my thoughts on Batman: The Long Halloween Part 2, there will be no spoilers for it, but I want to know if you're excited for it. What did you think of Part 1? Have you ever read the graphic novel? Let me know all of that in the comments below. Throw all your thoughts down there. Start the conversation. It is always the most important part. And while you're down there, if you're new to the channel, thank you so much for clicking on this video. Why don't you consider clicking the subscribe button? It does wonders to get my content out there, and you'll join a beautiful film fan community. The Long Halloween is one of my favorite Batman stories, easily top 5 of all time. I just love the work that Tim Sale and Jeph Loeb did on that story and how much it has meant to Batman in the overarching run of his existence. So I was super excited for this film, even more so after the first one, and it maintains a lot of qualities from that first one. First and foremost, the animation. Again, I cannot just celebrate enough how wrong I was about this animation. At first it didn't work. It's probably even better in this one. It maintains that dark, brooding, moody tone with a slow-paced story focused on the detective aspect of Batman and the struggles that come from the relationships that he has to maintain and balance as Bruce Wayne and as Batman. I think they do an incredible job with that aspect of the character in both of these films. And even though in the last one I had a few problems with the action, this one, while it does have action scenes, I not only do not have that problem anymore, but it is much more focused on the detective aspect. Again, if you're looking for action sequences in this specific Batman film, this is not the movie for that. You can count like on one hand the action sequences in Batman: The Long Halloween Part 2. So go into this one knowing it is much more like a detective story from like the 90s. A gritty take, like if it was David Fincher directing a Batman movie. Obviously not as good as that. I also continue to love the fact that Jensen Ackles is our Batman. He does a great job, and once again, Josh Duhamel playing Harvey Dent, and as we see the dark descent that this character takes on this second film, he does a tremendous job in it. He's one of my favorite Harvey Dents on screen, to be honest. He gives everything he can give to this character just with his voice. The writing is tremendous for this character, but performance only elevates what is already there, and I love how much it focuses on this character actually just in this second part. And even though it just happens for one scene, something I love in Part 2 is a quick sequence near the beginning with Scarecrow where he gets Batman with his fear gas and Batman starts seeing illusions and the animation style changed. We have these hard angle designs with thick lines around them. The movements are different. It truly feels like you're seeing this from the perspective of Batman. Not only how it literally looks, but how the camera moves around it, how the characters move, how things are perceived. I think it works really well. I only wish we could have seen more of it. All that being said, I do think Part 2 is not as good as Part 1. Now, I did decide to grade them as one, but nevertheless, the story is divided. So it feels like this film is all payoff. I feel the only thing that works in Part 2 when you look at it in isolation, or at least the thing that works the best, is the descent of Harvey Dent into becoming Two-Face. I think that's the one thing that really breaks the two movies apart, because apart from that, it feels like the first film was all build up, this one is all payoff. So this one does not feel as satisfying as it could be. There are so many great scenes in this movie, so many great moments, there is really good character work. But if they had combined the two films, it would have been even better. There are moments in part 2 where I feel the story is rushing to get to the end so it can fit into this one movie. And look, it's The Long Halloween. I think this story would always be complicated to adapt into an animated film, and they truly did the best they can. I think this is really good. I think as a whole, it really works, just not as good as it could have worked. I really respect what they wanted to accomplish, and in a lot of ways, they still accomplished it. I still think this film, despite deviating a slight bit from the graphic novel, although not too much, still has the balls to keep true to the thematic nature of the graphic novel, to investigate interesting characters with dynamic personalities and compelling struggles through their lives, exploring the sins of the father from Batman and Carmine Falcone's perspective, to explore the corrupted sense of justice from Gotham City and how the two sides of Harvey Dent see it. All these characters are very complicated. All these characters are very three-dimensional. And on that regard, I think this film works really well, and it has the balls to have a very mature, really emotionally complex ending to pay it all off. Dividing this story into two films was a risk. I would even call it a mistake in a few aspects, but at the end, both of them are solid, and if you watch them back to back, they really work as one cohesive unit. I want to grade them as one, because I feel that's what the story deserves, and even though they broke it apart, that's still how they wrote it, like if it was one movie. It just sucks that we had to see it divided. I'm giving Batman The Long Halloween a B+. Those are my thoughts on Batman The Long Halloween Part 2, but the grade counts for it as a whole. I just really consider this one big story, and I think they should have pulled it out as one big story. Thank you so much for watching. You are the best. Don't forget to share your thoughts on Batman The Long Halloween, and stay tuned for a very funny post-credit scene. It's a quick one, doesn't really matter for the story, but it's a good joke. Thank you so much once more. You are the best. If you've watched this far, remember to click the subscribe button if you haven't yet, because if you're still watching, you enjoyed it on some level. Thank you so much, and so until the next one, love each other and love the movies.